The Sperrgebiet, the Forbidden Zone, locked away from public access for almost 100 years, along one of the most treacherous shorelines the world knows. Home to millions of diamonds, as well as the most precious of all commodities on the planet, a spectacularly rich diversity of life. This biodiversity, as it is known, is all remarkable because it flourishes in one of the most inhospitable places on Earth. The sands, plains, and mountains of, as many believe, the oldest desert in the world, the Namib. An ominous fact about deserts in general is that they receive between 0 and 50 millimeters of rain a year. And yet, from the coast to the escarpment, which rises up from the desert floor just over 100 kilometers inland, this southwestern part of the Namib Desert has been declared a biodiversity hotspot, a special place, and one of 25 such world-acclaimed treasures very worth looking after. Over 300 species of mammal, birds and reptiles have been recorded here so far, as well as over 1,000 plant species. New records, such as this mesum with yellow flowers, are still found regularly and keep adding to the impressive total. The Sperrgebiet has always been in state hands. Even so, the public had no free access to it. Today, only 5% remains restricted from the public. The Namibian government has declared the remaining 95% a protected area, the Sperrgebiet National Park, which makes up nearly all of Namibia's share of the Succulent Karoo Biome. The rest of the biome stretches down across the Orange River into the Northern Cape Province and up to the Great Karoo in South Africa. In the whole of the Succulent Karoo hotspot, the Sperrgebiet is in fact the only true wilderness area and boasts the highest level of biodiversity in all of Namibia. Unlike other parts of Namibia, the Succulent Karoo receives most of its rain in winter, usually just under 100 millimeters a year. Another important source of moisture is the fog that rolls inland from the coast. Fog-laden winds are seldom strong. Conditions are usually quiet when there is fog. But, like 80% of Namibia, there is summer rain here too. There is even a third biome, whose effects can be felt in this area, namely the Namib Desert. The tiny settlement of serves as a pivotal point in a transition zone amongst these three different biomes that collide here: the Succulent Karoo, the Namib Karoo, and the Namib Desert. And each biome has its own characteristics when it comes to climate and living creatures. Although the Succulent Karoo is a specialized habitat for many forms of life, finding a tree that is not next to a river is rare. The region is very well known for its daisies that flower in profusion in the spring, like this true Namakwaland daisy. The biome is also famous for its succulents, which are plants that store water in their leaves, stems, roots, or any combination of these. The most common are the dwarf succulent shrubs, such as vecht and some crassulas. But only the Namibian part of the Succulent Karoo is the subject of this awareness-raising documentary. One of the darkest eras of Namibia's history spanned from 1904 to 1908 with the genocide of the Nama and Herero people. Shark Island, near Ludwitz, is one of the sites that mark this catastrophe. Also in 1908, Zacharias Lawala discovered the first diamond near Kolmatskop, just outside Ludwitz. As claims were furiously staked, in 1909, the newly rich quickly created a buffer area between them and any unwelcome diamond hunters out there. They were kept at bay, beyond the forbidden zone. The shiny fortunes made by miners along the Diamond Coast in those early years remain as weathered memories, battered by the infamous southwesterly wind. But it was that very wind which, millions of years ago, drove the sands from ancient seabeds relentlessly northwards, slowly building up the Namib sand sea and, of course, exposing the crystal jewels that lay glowing in the moonlight. How can anything actually survive here, if hardly any rain falls? Well, with an amazing array of tools, as it turns out. Succulents, like this aloe, stir in their squat, fleshy stems. Another plant with a stem that can store water is the botterboom. A succulent, such as the button plant, finds a home where it can be protected from the fierce wind. Any condensing fog that trickles down the rock is readily absorbed and saved up in its leaves. These tools have enabled each plant and animal that lives here to carve its own niche into the Succulent Karoo landscape. In fact, succulent plants make up a significant proportion of the plant diversity in the biome, up to 70% species in some places. These succulents, for example, have long papillae, or bladder cells, on their calyx, stems and leaves. Such cells are excellent for storing water. As the sometimes heavy coastal fog drifts in from the sea, it condenses against the slopes of a mountain or any other obstacle in its path. It trickles down between a crack in a rock and sinks into scrapes of sand between stones. Indeed, these three elements, the moisture, the landscape, and the wind, all conspire to create this truly unique wilderness. Other plants survive because sand adheres to their sticky leaves, and this protects them. A similarly handy tool in a succulent plant's shed is being able to stop growing for a time when conditions are not favorable. The plant will spring back to life as soon as there is some rain or fog to feed it. A succulent such as this stone plant can shrivel up and wait for better days. Others, like the one the Germans call Bloodfinger, change from green to red when they are stressed for moisture, or if they grow in soil that is rich in salts. While the grey-green leaves of this endemic help to reflect sunlight. The spiky thorns and bitter leaf juices in aloes ward off predators, while the leaves of many feiches have large tannin cells, making them too bitter to eat. Then there is the unusual adaptation of the Bushman candle species. Some of the leaves have evolved into thorns, so that the plant doesn't lose moisture. Even the stem is covered in a resin-like wax, which not only helps to limit transpiration, but also prevents the plant from being damaged. Animals too have their survival strategies. In the breeding season, the bright green coloring of this male southern spiny agama is very attractive to the brown female. Gemsbok don't need to drink water to survive. They get some of the moisture they need from juicy plants. The steenbok usually lies in cover when it is hot and feeds in the early morning and late afternoon. So the Forbidden Zone has served one very positive purpose. It has preserved the restricted ranges of an enormous amount of creatures that live in this part of the Succulent Karoo. It has also kept vast expanses of this exquisite landscape untouched. The scenes lying resplendent before you could have looked almost identical for millions of years. Today the sands still reel and swirl with a fast-moving air as they did millennia ago, chiseling away at the lone inselbergs dotting the plains, scraping at marble and limestone rocks, and forcing every living creature in their path to protect itself. It is these unusual features that make our part of the Succulent Karoo truly unique, and they will play a crucial role in attracting eco-tourists to this unspoiled silence. But Namibia's part of the Succulent Karoo is not only a biodiversity hotspot, it is also the only one in the world that is found in an arid environment. And as though that does not make it special enough, it is also a hotspot of endemism. The word endemic describes something that is found only in a particular area. This plant, for example, is found only on the Aurus mountain in the Sperrgebiet and nowhere else in the world. This forming dwarf succulent is endemic to the Succulent Karoo biome as a whole. The same is true for this aloe and this tiny succulent which grows amongst the rocks. And for these Namib lilies, their only home in the world is the mobile dunes of the Namib Sand Sea. For another group of plants, known as Zygophyllum, Namibia is regarded as a center of diversity and endemism. The Sperrgebiet is also a center of insect endemism in Namibia. Insects have suffered from habitat disturbance because of diamond mining in the past. In all animal and plant groups that have been studied so far, of the total that occur in the Sperrgebiet, the proportion of endemic species is high. The responsibility for conserving an endemic species is fairly and squarely that of the country or countries to which it is endemic. The high proportion of endemics in the Sperrgebiet will challenge Namibia's ability to fulfill this obligation to biodiversity, and the creation of the Sperrgebiet National Park as a new conservation area is the Namibian government's way of acknowledging it has every intention of shouldering this responsibility. One might think that one or two species of insects, which belong to the largest class of animals on Earth, would not be missed much if they were allowed to die out. But that, precisely, is where the idea of an ecosystem is best illustrated. The death of even one species means that whatever animal feeds on it might die too, and whichever animal relies on that now extinct animal might die in turn, and so on. It is impossible to predict the effect that the loss of a species will have down the line. So, if one talks about maintaining the biodiversity of the Succulent Karoo ecosystem, it means preserving every living being within it, no matter how small. This is especially important in fragile desert systems, like that of the Sperrgebiet, where the loss of one insect species might mean the loss of the plant that it pollinates. The forbidden zone has so far also served to keep out usually quite well-meaning tourists, such as the traveller who wants to take a little memento of a holiday, like this shell here, which belongs to the terrestrial snail. Each time something is removed from its natural home in a protected area, there is just that much less for the next visitor to wonder at. Other people that have been prevented from coming into the Sperrgebiet are unscrupulous plant collectors who rape the soil for rare plants, sometimes removing whole colonies of them. This has been the fate of this stem succulent, a red darter species known as the bottle tree or elephant's trunk. The succulent karoo should continue to be forbidden to these types of people and others who are bent on mindless and self-centered destruction. On the other hand, many people argue that mining has destroyed far larger areas of formerly pristine wilderness in the forbidden zone. Indeed, it is well known that mining operations have left gaping wounds in the habitats of many plants and animals. But today, corporate responsibility and legally binding environmental management plans are helping to repair the damage. Scarred land and mining dumps are being replanted with vegetation that occurs naturally in the area. In some parts, the rehabilitated landscape has healed so well that it takes a trained eye to know where to look for the telltale signs of human impact. So the declaration of the Sperrgebiet National Park brings with it many stringent conditions for anybody who operates here. This includes researchers, prospectors, miners, tour operators and tourists. The idea is to restrict human impact to a minimum. For example, vehicles of any kind are only allowed to drive in a few clearly defined routes, and footpaths have been made within special areas like the Aros Mountain, which is home to some very special endemic plants, so that tourists can appreciate them without causing destruction to their fragile rocky habitat. Other areas that are particularly sensitive to human impact include the coast and the coastal dune hummocks, as well as the Orange River Valley, which separates the Namibian part of the Succulent Karoo from its sister in South Africa. In fact, the whole of Namibia's portion of the Succulent Karoo presents such visual splendor that tourists, photographers and filmmakers will find it very hard to leave. The sweeping gravel plains covered with thick grass after good winter rains brings a bounty of plant and animal life. The Ludwig's bustard, comfortably strutting its stuff here, is restricted largely to the Karoo and the Namib Desert. A very difficult resident to spot is the shy brown hyena, a red darter species whose health and whereabouts are diligently tracked by researchers in the area. Very popular among photographers and lovers of animals alike are the Namib Desert's feral horses. The horses lend an air of mystique to the barren landscape and set one's mind brushing past the dusty shoals of history to explain where they came from. Although they are not endemic to the region, they too deserve protection. And there's something breathtaking about being here, so remote. No traffic, no sirens, no television, no crowds, no barking dogs. Where without a highly trained guide able to negotiate the deep soft sand, the treacherous rocks, some dangerous animals, the sometimes poisonous plants, the average city dweller would be lost or desperate in a day. But most of the grand beauty here owes itself to Namibia's fascinating geology, from the humble Dikkewillem, an approximately 135 million-year-old mountain in the between Aas and Ludwitz, to the dramatic sculpture of the Bougainvels, Namibia's majestic rock arch on the southern coastline. To protect the plants that gain a tenuous foothold here against the sometimes raging sands and winds, a special path leads the visitor to an adrenaline-rushed view from the top of the arch onto the crashing waves below. As for diamonds, all those mined in Namibia travel down the Orange River from halfway across to the southernmost part of the African continent. This species of tree, the white korea, is found only along the river and nowhere else in the world. When it comes to conservation of our natural heritage, one sometimes senses that a battle line has been drawn in the sand between progress and preservation in this protected area. You are either on the side of development for Namibia, or you believe in conserving this natural beauty and all its biodiversity at all costs. So any development that is to sustain livelihoods in the long run, whether or not it will help to eradicate poverty, needs to address the vulnerability of the ecosystems it has an impact on. Another aspect of socio-economic versus environmental survival comes into play with plants that have been discovered to have commercial value because of their medicinal properties or use in cosmetics. Hoodia, for example, is a protected Namibia. These plants are used in slimming drugs, while fragrant essential oils are being extracted from wild rosemary. Care needs to be taken to ensure that such plants are sustainably exploited for the ongoing benefit of as many Namibians as possible. According to the World Wildlife Fund, it is largely because humans threaten the habitats of many of our planet's species, from fish to mammals, that their populations have fallen by about 30% in the last 30 years alone. Don't let Namibia be part of such a gloomy future. Help us make sure we balance our needs, that we provide livelihoods for our people through environmentally sound land use practices, and at the same time treasure the special features of the succulent karoo.